Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cooper. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, my man?
And Matt Jackson.
What's going on, guys?
Not much. I'm excited to get into this episode tonight. We are continuing our Inside the Prospect series, which is, let's be honest, it's my favorite series that we do all year long. And I think it's our listeners' favorite too. I think this is our bread and butter is the rookie content. So this is a fun time of year, and it's a long series too. We're going to be in this all the way up through the draft. So we've got basically 4 more months of talking rookies on here, which is going to be a lot of fun. And we got some good ones tonight. We're going to be discussing Omarion Hampton, running back out of UNC, here on the main show. He is listed at 6 foot and 220 pounds, junior, early declare, and was the number 11 running back in his recruiting class coming out of high school. He was a 4-star prospect, and the production is just monstrous. I mean, the last 2 years in particular, his sophomore and junior seasons, he had 1,500 yards as a sophomore with 1,500 touchdowns. That'd be pretty crazy. No, 15 touchdowns on the ground with another 222 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown. And if you think, well, he can't build on that 1,500 yards, 1,700 all-purpose, well, he came in junior year and he blew that out of the water. He had 1,660 on the ground with another 15 rushing touchdowns and another 373 through the air with 2 receiving touchdowns. So you're talking about almost, actually, I think he cleared 2,000 all-purpose yards between rushing and receiving this year as a junior, and he declares early for the NFL draft. So the production's ridiculous. Does the tape match it? We're going to talk about it. A lot of hype around this guy. A lot of people discussing him as probably a top 5 running back in this draft class. So we're going to get into all that. And then later tonight on the bonus show, if you remember on the website, we're going to be getting into Cameron Scatibo, if that's how you pronounce it. I'm not sure. Scatabo. The world may never know, but we're going to get into him on our bonus show tonight, and you're not going to want to miss that one. So if you're not already subscribed, go to CouchScouts.com and buy one of our membership packages. Specifically, the Scout Potato membership package is going to get you access to those bonus podcast episodes. It's also going to get you access to our full rookie guide when we release that. So we're going to be getting into... Last year, I think we covered like 65 prospects on the rookie guide, and we might be going even deeper than that this year. So we're going to cover, if you're playing in a 12-team league, only 48 guys are getting drafted. So we're going way deeper even than you need so that you know all the names and we find all the hidden gems, anybody that you would even think about drafting. It's going to be the ultimate cheat sheet to dominating your rookie draft. So definitely go to CouchScouts.com and check that out. And we appreciate you guys considering that. Thank you guys to the ones that are already subscribed. We appreciate you guys that you care enough about what we would have to say that you would pay your hard-earned dollars for it. So we're going to work to make it worth every penny that you paid. So that's our promise to you. But without further ado, we're going to get into Omarion Hampton. And I'm excited. This guy was a fun tape watch. I don't know how you guys felt. I know Jackson and I got to watch some live together on our Discord last night, and it was a lot of fun. So
I will say, there's some times where we watch film and you sit down and it's kind of a drag to watch 5 or 6 games of a player. You're like, maybe I just watched 3. I don't know. But I never felt that with either one of these guys that we're talking about tonight. So tonight, yeah. If you're not subscribed to the bonus show, tonight's the night to do that because we've got some things to say about both of these guys.
That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, Thomas Peterson, one of our listeners, he actually helps us out with managing the Discord and some of our financial stuff. He reminisced about last year when he was live in the Discord watching film with us on who was it? This guy went undrafted. Imani Bailey.
Boy, was that a watch.
We just talk about when you're in the slog, deep into the prospect names, and you're like, "What am I doing with my life? Why am I wasting my time watching Imani Bailey?" But these were not Imani Baileys. These were fun tape watches. So let's get into Omarion Hampton. As always with the running back position, we want to start with vision and patience. It's kind of the core that everything else is built around. You can have all the athletic ability in the world, but um, if you possess what Christopher Harris called elite blindness, it's not going to do you much good because you're just going to be running into the backs of your offensive linemen over and over again. So vision and patience, super, super important. And we'll start with you, Rupert. What did you see from Hampton in this area?
I graded him out really strong in this area. And, it's kind of hard to get that many rushing yards if you don't have good vision. And I feel like he showed that over and over again. And he also possessed good patience as well. I graded him out as an 8 on both of those categories. And I think that he could rely on his patience because he had a really good north-south burst. So he could kind of wait behind the line. He would kind of stack his feet like one behind the other so that he can just burst off his back foot really quick. And I just saw him do that over and over again. And I think he showed creativity too at the next level to really break off the long runs. I just thought he was really strong in this category. He's not a weed or the gold standard, but he's going to come into the NFL and be really good in this, in my opinion.
All right, Jackson, what did you see there?
I had him graded a little lower than that. I had him at a 7.5 for vision, 7 for patience. He's definitely a see yards, get yards type of guy. If the hole is open, he's not going to miss many reads. He's going to hit the right hole pretty consistently. And like Rupert said, he's got really great burst for his size, and we're going to talk about that later, to hit the hole hard. There were a few times, and Cooper, you can speak to this a little bit because we actually saw it together while we were watching film, where he was almost too patient sometimes behind the line of scrimmage. He would stand back there, and you would want him to use that burst that he's got a little bit earlier than he actually did, and a hole would close, or he wouldn't get around, an incoming safety inside the box, or a defensive end that was coming around the corner, as often as he probably could have if he was a little less patient. But again, neither one of these things were bad for him. I mean, they're both good by NFL standards. So this is not an area that I'm concerned about, but sometimes a little too patient for my liking.
Yeah, I would say it was a mixed bag for me. So there were moments where it's kind of like you're saying, Jackson, it maybe took him a little too long to make a decision. And then there were other moments where he wasn't quite patient enough. Like, I think he's still developing in the feel of just, the game didn't seem like it was slow for him, where it was just like decisions are easy, and it seemed like he had to think about it a little bit. But he was decisive most of the time. I would say he was decisive. He was a north-south runner, like you said, see the hole, hit the hole. Not a lot of pitter-pattering or dancing in the backfield. And so that's what I really liked about Hampton with his vision, was just the decisiveness. And I think he understood the blocking schemes. He understood, where everything was intended to go and what the defense was doing. And I think overall, like, you said this well, Jackson, when we were watching on the Discord the other night. You said he's going to get what's blocked for you pretty much every time. And more often than not, he's going to get more than what's blocked. Just because he's picking up hidden yardage, falling forward, breaking tackles, this type of thing. So he's going to get at least what's blocked for him, and more often than not, he's going to get more than what's blocked for him. The only thing I'll disagree with that you said, Rupert, you said he was a creative runner. I just didn't see that. I felt like that's where for me, I had him at a 7, which is good. 8 is great. I couldn't get him to that great standpoint for me in my grades because it was like he's not making the wrong decision. He's consistently making the right reads. He's got good vision. But for me to say somebody has great vision or incredible or elite, like to get above that number 7, I want to see more creativity, more, just getting to that second level, going off script, beyond just, hey, this is the blocking scheme. This is how it was drawn up. And I didn't feel like I saw a lot of that from Hampton.
No, I agree with that. That kind of speaks to some of the stuff that we're going to talk about later. Just his elusiveness, break tackle, that sort of thing. Um,
Mhm.
not necessarily a weak point for him, but that's not where he really thrives at either.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like the bobbing and weaving, seeing a cutback lane that maybe wasn't designed into the run, but catches the defense overplaying it. Maybe teasing one way to get the defense to choose the wrong leverage and then shooting back the other direction. Like all those like little advanced things, I just didn't see him doing much of. It's like I'm
Yeah,
going to follow my blocks and I'm going to
yeah,
get this
I
block
think
for you.
that's the key point, right? It's the much of. Like I saw it, and I'm sure you guys did too, where like he would do it occasionally, but it was like so rarely that I couldn't let that affect my grade either. Like I would see like a nice little jab step and explode the other direction, like maybe once or twice in the 3 or 4 games that I watch, 4 or 5 that I watch. Like it's not something that like he did consistently. It's in his tool bag, but it's not something that he's like building, making his bread and butter on.
Yeah, so I mean, all that to say, this was not something that jumped off as being like an incredible trait for me, but it wasn't something that hurt him in a negative way either. And he has a lot of really great traits. So I'm excited to get into those. And that's kind of a natural transition, I think, into the next area that we like to talk about with running backs, which is elusiveness. And, I think it's one of our higher graded traits when it comes to, um, when our film grading system, not every attribute has the same weight to it. In terms of when it spits out our final grade, some grades count a little bit more than others do. Elusiveness is one of our higher ones because I think it's really important for a running back to be able to make people miss. And certainly there are other archetypes, and you can succeed and be a good fantasy running back without being incredibly elusive, but it is a really important trait. And I'll start with you this time, Jackson. What did you see from Hampton in the area of elusiveness?
Yeah, Hampton makes people miss, but it's not because he's elusive. He's definitely more in the arc of a power back, and he does that really, really well. So, like, don't hear me say that like that's necessarily bad. Like it's such a big power back that like we're gonna get to that point and it's gonna be just off the charts. But elusiveness, you made the good point when we were on that phone call, Cooper, and I'm gonna kind of take this. I'm gonna butcher what you said, but you basically said that like whenever you're that big, I mean, he's 220 pounds, right? 6 foot, 220. It takes a lot to stop mass going as fast as Hampton was going sometimes.
Hmm.
And what that means is he takes a lot to slow down. I mean, he's taken 3, 4 extra steps where he's not pulling off those jukes in a phone booth. He's not
Right.
making a man miss. He's not, breaking down and juking a guy out of his shoes. That's just not his game. I gave him a 6.5 for this. Again, it's a little bit above NFL average. I feel like I saw it a few times where I was like, oh, that was a really nice, making a man miss at the second level because you planted and exploded the other direction. But again, like I said before, that's just something that I saw so few like many times. Like I didn't see it enough that I was like, this is
Hmm.
how he's making his bread and butter. That's just not what he does. It just takes him so long to slow down. He is not by definition an elusive back.
Yeah, I think the way I phrased that was it's like trying to turn a cruise ship. It's like if somebody jumps off, like you see those videos sometimes of these idiots like jumping off of a cruise ship because they're drunk and got dared to do it or whatever. It's like, man, they're dead. Like, hey, by the time, at night, by the time that ship gets turned around, they ain't finding you, man. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're done out in the middle of the ocean. It takes a while to turn a cruise ship. And he's like a freaking battleship, Omarion Hampton. Dude is he's a tank. So 6 foot 220, really, really powerful, which we're gonna talk about in a minute. And honestly, on the elusiveness thing, I think most of the time he wasn't even trying to make anybody miss. Like, he was a heat-seeking missile looking for contact.
He was like, come get me.
He was going to take the fight to you. He was a Mack truck. He was going to run you over. He wanted the contact. He wanted the smoke. He was going to wear you down over a game because he was going to make you not want to tackle him. He was going to make it hurt. And he did that really well. I think of all the power backs we've graded out over the last couple of years, he's by far my favorite that we have studied. And so I don't want to bury the lead here. We're going to talk about power in a minute. But, I mean, we're not spoiling anything here, right? Like, I think everybody knows he's a power back. He's listed at 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's not an elusive back. And I think most of the time he wasn't even really trying to be. There are these few moments on film where you get this glimpse of a really explosive cut, like a one cut. Like, he's not doing spins and juking around, jitterbug.
He's not doing what Bucky Irving did last year.
If there's a cut, it's one big, powerful cut. And then for the most part, he's a north-south guy and he's looking to run you over. There's very few instances on film of him making anybody miss. I'm okay with that. It's not, I don't want to make it sound like I'm bashing on Hampton because I didn't have great, amazing things to say about his vision or patience. And now I'm not saying amazing things about his elusiveness. But those were the 3 lowest grades that I had for him. Everything else on the sheet is an 8 or higher. So I loved Hampton. The overall grade is really high. We just happen to be starting out talking about some of the areas that I don't think are his strength. What did you see, Rupert?
I saw the same thing, but I kind of graded him as like size adjusted quickness. I gave him a 6.5, and then size adjusted elusiveness. I gave him a 7. I think he was elusive enough to be able to make the guy not hit him straight on his arm tackle. He's blowing through that every single time. He's not going to juke a guy out of his shoes, but he's going to make you hit him with your arm to where you're not bringing down that freight train. So I thought he was good enough there, especially considering his size and how good he is, running north-south.
For sure. Yeah, so, I mean, we all saw it the same way. He's not an elusive back. It's not his strength. He's more elusive than Caleb Johnson, who we did a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he at least, you can see that he has the physical ability to do it on occasion. It's just not what he's looking to do most of the time. So let's get into the real meat of this conversation. And the next trait we're talking about is power and contact balance. And yeah, I definitely think he lives up to the billing here, but let's get into it because I know you can look at the height, weight, and okay, yeah, he's probably a power back. Not everybody that's that big actually really knows how to use it and play with power and good pad level and really breaking tackles and all that. So we'll go to you, Rupert. What did you see here?
Again, pretty much off the charts. I give him 9 for physicality and power. Him and also Scatabo were just so fun to watch, just to see how the humans deflect off them when he lowers his shoulder or when he jumps in the air. Like, we shared a clip in our group chat of him jumping through the air and then knocking 3 guys back. Like, the amount of power he can generate, especially like when he has you head on, it's just ridiculous. I gave him an 8 for contact balance because he doesn't just, fall over. He has good balance to where, he can adjust his body, kind of deflect the hit, keep up on his feet. And then I had him at 8.5 for breaking tackles. And honestly, looking at that now, I feel like I should probably bump that up to a 9. But yeah, it was just so fun to watch him in this area.
For sure. I had him even higher than you. It felt almost heretical to do this because, just for context, we have listed that for a guy to be a 10 out of 10, we have a name up at the top, and they're usually Hall of Famers. And it's like, for a guy to be a 10 out of 10 in this category means he's on this guy's level. And for physicality and power, that guy is Earl Campbell. And it feels like almost heresy to even compare anybody to Earl Campbell. But I actually went, like, after I gave him a 10 in this, because I just consistently throughout the tape watching, I was blown away. I was like, this is the most powerful runner I've watched in the last, we've been doing this for a couple of seasons now. I was doing it kind of unofficially before we started Couch Scouts. So it's probably about 4 years that I've been doing this. And I think he's the most powerful runner that I've scouted in those 4 years at least. And in my notes, I wrote really, really strong lower body, like just ridiculously strong. Because, there were plays where he would get stood up at the 2-yard line by 5 defenders trying to gang tackle him, and he would carry them all into the end zone and so many other instances. The one you mentioned where he jumps up in the air. When you're the one that's airborne and the other guy has his feet on the ground, he should be pushing you backwards, not the other way around. But he's going to jump up into the air through 2 guys and push them both backwards into the end zone, and just stupid stuff like that. So I went back and watched some Earl Campbell highlights after I assigned this grade, and I was like, it kind of looks like Omarion Hampton at times. So
Dude, it's so funny you mentioned that, because I actually put a 10 down. And then I looked up and saw Earl Campbell. I was like, maybe not 10. I'll go with 9. And then I was like, maybe I should watch some Earl Campbell highlights, but I didn't have time to. That's so funny.
It almost occurred to me that, like, if I'm not going to give Hampton a 10, then we're probably not ever going to give anybody a 10.
Yeah.
Because he's just ridiculous. So, yes, he is extremely powerful. He uses it really, really well. I gave him a 9 for pad level. So even though he's listed at 6 foot, I felt like he played a lot smaller than that. He was constantly dropping his pads down and dropping the boom on anybody that tried to tackle him. I had a 9 out of 10 for him on contact balance. And I had an 8, which, like you said, in hindsight, maybe should be higher for break tackle. But yeah, in this area, he's just one of the most powerful runners I've ever studied.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything you guys haven't said. 8.5 for break tackle. I had a 9 for contact balance, 9 for pad level, 10 for physicality. Like, going back to what you said, Cooper, like, it all starts with his pad level. He's listed at 6 foot, but he plays at like 5'9", 5'10". Like that's where his pads are consistently at. And he just generates so much power. Like, I've never found myself watching somebody on film and going, whoa, or like, ugh, like as many times as I did watching him hit somebody. Like, if he's not a 10 in power, I don't know who else is going to be. For our listeners, those that are listening right now, if anybody remembers scouting kind of Javonte Williams when he was at UNC, it's a lot like the same thing. Like, there's a famous clip of Javonte Williams ripping off a big run and breaking like 3 or 4 tackles and just like running through a guy. That's what Omarion Hampton is, but it's so much more than that. Like, he does that so consistently that, like, he even makes Javonte Williams at UNC, who everybody was like, man, this guy's a power back. Like, he makes him look small. So, like, he just that's his game, and he does it so well.
Yeah, Javonte, I think, had probably better balance than Hampton, but Hampton's just so much more just pure, like, strength, physicality. He just can do things physically that Javonte doesn't have in his bag. So
when this show is over with, for those listening, I'll tweet that clip on our Twitter page. of what we're talking about, where he jumps over a guy and like levels 3 guys, because it's something that you all need to watch.
All right, so last thing that we're going to talk about here, or second to last, is just the athletic profile, and we've kind of talked about it as we've gone along a little bit because we value functional athleticism, and if you test well at the combine, but it doesn't translate to the football field, who cares? So it's hard to even talk about all the other things that we've talked about without bringing up the athletic side of it. But let's just talk about it for a minute. Size, speed, burst, lateral agility. We'll start with you, Rupert. What did you see there?
We already kind of talked about lateral agility. It's not that great, but size adjusted is pretty good. His burst and acceleration, I think, is really good, especially considering his size. Like, he gets up to speed quick, and he doesn't have the best like top end speed. It's very good for his size, and that's why he's able to break off so many long runs. But I think it's his acceleration is what really kind of sets him apart for that size. So graded him out really well there. Gave him an 8 for both game speed and burst acceleration.
You know, I agree kind of what Rupert's saying. I gave him an 8 for burst and acceleration, 8 for game speed as well. If he was like 5'9", 5'10", 190 pounds, like, he's not that fast, right? But like the fact that he's 6 foot, 220, there were so many plays watching him where like I was like, the burst and acceleration for his size was like truly special. Sometimes sitting there watching. So like for his size, like athletically, he's an athlete and he plays like it as well. Like he's not just going to test well at the combine. Like he's got some real functional athleticism on his game film.
Yeah, I have it in my notes, word for word, almost exactly what you guys said. I said at times his burst is just nuts for his size. So yeah, the burst in particular, the acceleration, you guys said it. It's like sometimes he sees the hole and just explodes, and you're like, whoa, how is he moving that fast at that size? And it's not a lot of side to side lateral. It's just when he's able to get north south, man, he's an explosive runner, and he can definitely kind of turn into that runaway freight train. So exact same grades, 8 for speed, 8 for burst. So we're all in lockstep on that one. And the last thing we'll talk about here is the third down skill set. So obviously more and more with every passing year, this becomes more and more valuable, particularly for us as fantasy players, that they can stay in the game on third down and that they're going to catch some passes. So especially when we're talking about a power back that you might typically think of as a 2-down grinder, we need him to be able to stay on the field for all 3 downs. What did you see here? We'll start with you, Jackson.
Yeah, so there's some times where you're watching a guy that's 220 pounds, right? And you're like, he should be able to like get in pass protection and really do some damage. But like then you watch him pass protect and like you're like, oh, this guy's kind of like small and afraid to block people. Like that was not Omarion Hampton. Like he uses his 220 pounds to block people pretty well. And when it comes to receiving game, like I never watched him catch a pass and went, I'm unsure about his hands. Like he looked like he had some soft hands. Looked like he was really serviceable in the pass catching department. He didn't run a lot of routes that I saw that were too exceptional, but he was serviceable in this area. I gave him a 7.5 in receiving, 7.5 in pass pro as well. He can do it really well. He's a big guy, but he's not going to be one that you have to take off the field in third down situations. You can leave him on the field and do pretty well, for your team.
Yeah, this is what makes me so excited about him, to be honest. I think I'm a little out of lockstep with you all, but I thought his pass pro was incredible. I gave him a 9.5. Like, I saw him so many times. Like, there's a blitzing linebacker up the A gap, and he's like, oh, man, I'll get the quarterback. And then Hampton just steps across in front of the quarterback and just absolutely stonewalls the guy. Like, he uses that incredible lower body strength to really just, like, stop guys in their tracks. And they're, like, running basically full speed. and he just stonewalls. So I saw it over and over again. I feel like every time he went out of the backfield, he would always like smash the defensive end and, you know, help his left tackle or right tackle out. I saw that over and over again. He's more than happy to get in there. And I thought he showed good technique. There's a couple times where like he gave up sacks. But in my mind, I kind of attributed it to the quarterback, because the quarterback basically like ran into him instead of just staying in the pocket. He started trying to escape and basically made it to where there's no way that Hampton could continue that block.
That offensive line was also trash, by the way. Let's
Yeah.
call a spade.
It was. And again, that's like what makes me like just blown away with the production he put up. And probably why he felt like he needed to help out every time he was leaking out of the backfield.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, just to even add more context to the production, they just weren't a good offense as a whole. Like the passing attack with Drake May gone, they had 3 or 4 different quarterbacks that started games for them this year. They didn't have much in the receiving game to write home about. So every time they stepped on the field, the other team knows our number one job is stop Omarion Hampton.
And they couldn't.
And they couldn't do it. Like game after game after game, he's putting up these gaudy stat lines. But yeah, to get back to the pass protection, I actually did see more in line with what you saw, Rupert. I gave him a 7.5. That should be a little bit higher. The reason that it didn't get higher for me, I saw a few plays where it was like an awareness. It wasn't a physical or a technique or a willingness. It was just an awareness thing where he was late picking up on a blitz that he should have been picking up on, and the guy got to his quarterback basically unimpeded. Or you see Hampton like out of position and kind of, oh crap, and trying to dive at the guy last second. So there were a few, and I'm not trying to exaggerate, like this happened a few times a game or anything. I mean, I think we watched 5 or 6 games of tape. I saw maybe 3 or 4 instances of this awareness kind of issue that can be coached and learned. Certainly more often than not, I saw what you saw, Rupert, where he was just stonewalling guys because he's so strong and he's so willing in that department. So yeah, overall, it's certainly not going to be something that's going to keep him off the field at the NFL level by any means. And I would say more than serviceable. I mean, 7.5, that for me, that means he's between good and great. And probably in that scale, I'd lean more towards the great side. So maybe I bump him up to an 8. But I guess the awareness stuff that I saw is what keeps me from getting him up into that incredible range where you had him, Rupert. From a receiving, actual pass catching standpoint, I saw what you mentioned, Jackson. Really soft, reliable hands, and basic route running. Like nothing crazy, but they asked him to run a couple little angle Texas routes, and he was able to beat the linebacker. He was pretty dangerous after the catch when he caught it. And certainly on screens and dump offs and stuff, he was really good, was a threat to house call anytime he got one of those. So yeah, I think he's a 3 down back. And I think it, particularly if he lands with a team that's going to use him that way, you don't see too many bell cows in the NFL these days, but he certainly has the potential to be that. And the fantasy upside is pretty monstrous if he lands with a team that chooses to use him in that way. Dynasty Dogs, Mike, one of our good friends, hangs out with us in the Discord all the time, one of our site members. He says, my comp for Hampton is Jonathan Taylor, which, you know, that's a pretty good comp. I can see that. And certainly if he had that kind of production in the NFL, we'd be thrilled with it as fantasy owners. So I like that call out there from Mike.
Yeah, I like that comp a lot. I was leaning towards like a, you know, like the best that you've seen of James Conner. But honestly, I feel like he has a little bit more upside with his, I think he has a little bit better long speed. So I really like that Jonathan Taylor comp.
Yeah. So overall, just to kind of put a bow on all of this, for our grading system, anywhere from a 75 to a 79.9 is fantasy starter. 80 and up is elite fantasy producer. And we have him on the very high end of fantasy starter. So my final grade for him, well, not final. These things are up for tweaking all the way between now and the draft. We lock these grades in at the draft. We don't change anything to try to make ourselves look right later after the fact. But until the draft, we can go back and watch the film and tweak things. But for now, I'm at a 77 on him. Jackson is at a 78, and Rupert was at a 78.83, so just the slightest bit higher than the other two of us. But we all have him graded as a high-end fantasy starter. With obviously, if he lands in the right spot, could have that elite fantasy producer upside. So we love Omarion Hampton, and for context too, last year our highest graded running back, for me, it was Jonathan Brooks at a which RIP. I guess we'll never find out whether that one was right or wrong. But I had him at a 75.75. So I'm a decent bit higher on Hampton than I was on Brooks, and he was my RB1. So I'm saying Hampton would have been my RB1 in last year's class. So this is a guy that we're all really high on, and definitely, I think at this point, we're going to talk about Scativo on the bonus show, and we all really liked him too. And so you'll want to tune in and hear what we have to say. But even just from an age, projected draft capital, some of those things, like even there, like I would give the edge rankings wise to Hampton. I think at this point, which we'll see. We'll get into all that. I don't want to spoil the bonus show for everybody, but they're closer than people might think. So appreciate you guys tuning in. You can find me on Twitter/X at CouchScoutsFF. You can find Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF, and you can find Mr. Jackson at Devi Matt. You can find us in our free Discord, which the link will be in the show notes or the link in our bio if you're on Twitter watching us. And yeah, check out the website, CouchScouts.com. Leave us some good feedback. We always love getting comments from our listeners. We'd greatly appreciate if you'd leave us a review. That helps people find the channel. Only if it's a good review. 5-star reviews only. Thank you. But I'm just kidding around. I mean, I'm kind of not. Just 5-star or nothing. I don't need your hate. I'm kidding. I'm not really kidding. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.